It's 7 a.m. Your alarm on your phone goes off and you're feeling exhausted. But as always, you push through and get up for work. You get ready, bring yourself to your job, and put in a ridiculous amount of effort either working or pretending to work. You spend hours and hours and hours at a physically demanding job or a couch potato job where you can feel yourself rotting. You produce an output which you could probably do better with less time to do so, and then later on, after your shift is over, you get ready to leave, you commute home, spend what little time you have left for the rest of the day running chores like cooking a meal made from expensive grocery items or buying takeout from an overpriced restaurant, from the finest to the trashiest. Or maybe you'll sacrifice cleaning or a good meal for leisure and recreation because you can't catch a break and you're always exhausted. You work like this for at least 40 hours every week, not including the time it takes you to get ready every day, not including overtime, not including the time it takes you to commute, not including the chores to clean your house or get your car fixed or drop off your family member or friend at X or Y. Parents, especially, are encumbered by a large amount of time needed to commit to their children. You spend at least 160 hours of your time every single month, if not way, way more, or not enough, resulting in most likely having it harder to get by. Working at a job where you are constantly asked to do more and more, having more than you were signed on to do, for the same pay the whole time. Being paid an amount when you start doesn't mean they'll stop tacking on things for you to do. And the hardest working people will often only get the highest standards in return, which constantly trap their own autonomy and aptitude in a never-ending cycle of working hard but expected to work harder in response. And don't forget, you'll have all of these different kinds of expenses to manage. Don't forget car costs, insurance, plate renewal fees, healthcare costs from pre or post appointment copays to baseline required for coverage purchases amounts and times in the form of deductibles, to costly monthly expenses in the form of premiums, and more, isn't there? If you went to any school that wasn't completely covered or wasn't dirt cheap, you'll have student debt, which of course has interest payment on it. I could go on and on and on about all these expenses the average person has right now, but you know where I'm coming from and you know where I'm going with this. There is more than one reactionary falsity going around, whether it's about quiet quitting or quiet thriving. This one is about telling those whose job conditions are poor to get another job. And I gotta say, I think this is some of the most out of touch and disgraceful things these class trader, fellow working class people have said. I see and hear this as a delivery driver myself. I hear it not just spoken to other delivery drivers, but from all kinds of other workers said to all kinds of other workers. But we seem to hear more than one time and again, is some rhetoric involving getting a better job when any person is faced with struggling situations and working conditions. There is a long tradition of ignorant people, workers or bourgeois alike, in the face of whenever a worker is seeking betterment, in the face of whenever any worker is voicing complaints or trying to communicate and even organize, that some kind of smug coworker or overly confident family member or friend just blurts out, "Get a better job, you don't like it here, go somewhere else," or other phrases like that. More and more do these mistaken people reveal the vacuum of understanding they have about this. There are so many problems with this take. Where do I even start? You know, there's almost an aversion to worker solidarity sometimes, even in my own experience, listening to good old, little obedient workers spew the most blinding nonsense, like they're not even conscious of what they're saying themselves. Asking for better conditions and being told to get a better job is like asking your parents if you can have an allowance if you do chores and they say no, but you ask why, and then your siblings or parents say, "Oh yeah, well if you don't like it here, why don't you go somewhere else?" I think anybody who says this is afraid to admit to themselves that the working conditions of the world right now are not good, and they want to take that out on us when we try to advocate for more, especially considering it most likely comes off as entitlement to them, which couldn't be further from the truth. It's not entitlement, and thus we owe it to ourselves and each other to stand up for ourselves and each other. There's a rise of self-help, self-betterment, and general self-actualization culture going on. With the worsening conditions of capitalism, people are looking inward more than ever to see what their own personal work requires them to do so they can be happy. What I would argue is the last bastion of pro-capitalist reactionary content. It may sound counterintuitive, but I think a lot of this self-esteem building and healing work that therapy, for example, is offering a lot of people right now is showing a more pressing problem amongst us all. It's great and all to focus on self-esteem becoming more and more popular, but this philosophy of seeking self-love and to better oneself, to treat others better and to understand and communicate our own needs, this philosophy isn't promoted in our social climate, is it? In fact, many workers, when one seeks to speak up or asks for better, will often be downplayed by their fellow workers. If that just leave rebuttal was spoken towards a person in that individual's family, every reasonable person would agree that's out of line and borders near harassment. There's nothing human about being so totally dismissive of another person's asking for better. There's a toxic infighting present, but not within leftists. It's within the working class. And this is just another capitalist projection, as always. The competitive race to the bottom has everyone constantly pitted against each other. Many people think working together is some kind of commie plot, as the long-term effects of the American Empire's campaign to scare the world away from their own liberation runs deep. These reactionary statements come mostly from older generations, and this tells me there's a lot more going on than just entitled Gen Z or millennials, but that's what you'll hear from them. In the future, I'll make a video about the generational impression right now and go through the baby boomers, Gen X, millennials, and Gen Z, and discuss how the cultural differences are getting in the way and how older people are crushing us with the old ways, and that's a video for another day. The focus here is recognizing the unsustainability of such a reactionary position as saying, just get a better job. Every person who asks for better working conditions cannot possibly physically maintain a lifestyle of moving to the next job whenever something needs to be improved. This isn't sustainable for every person, this position, let alone for every single person who voices their concerns but is ultimately dismissed the same. What should be the norm is that it is the pure aim of every worker to demand better for their conditions. We don't need 5 days a week for work. We don't need 40 hours every week. The workers in the previous generations thought that 6 working days a week was fine, but it was socialists and other leftists who fought for the 2-day weekend. It was socialists who stopped child labor, and it's the modern era Republicans and Democrats who are bringing back child labor. Both of these things seem so inevitable and dominable, the 5 days a week, 40 hours a week, just like they were going to be the way things are in the past. And yet both of them were overturned by active and forceful leftists, workers willing to pressure for better. They demanded and forced the owners to meet their demands, and they induced the appropriate and necessary pressure to do so. Every time you hear a person saying anything anti-worker, from get a better job to just leave to you entitled Gen Z to nobody wants to work anymore, recognize and say out loud to those people what they are. They are delusional. They are out of touch. They are scared to fight for their own worth, so they'll tear you down when you're stronger to ask for better. They will take you down with them like crabs in a bucket. Fight against these people. They're disappointed in their own selves for the place they're in. They've been conditioned to accept these conditions, and they didn't take a single second to think otherwise, or to push through the pushback they received when asking for better at their time. But now we know better. We are unified. We can be on the same page. We can stand together. This was always true, but now it's even more true with the rise of information spreading even more and more. It's now even more true with the internet and social interactions universalized more and more. Even if the platforms and technology exist for the betterment of capital enterprise as of right now, it still works to our benefit more and more. I recommend to any of those who hear these people spewing this reactionary nonsense to speak up, fight back. Don't let people get away with accepting or speaking on what you're allowed to see is not good enough. There's also different arguments you can use for your position. There's many different kinds of arguments you can use. I can recommend some to you. I only have some, and the best ones I have available. The first one is people will naturally seek to better their own lives. Point out to anybody who's against this that people naturally seek better for themselves every day in their lives. When they save money, when they age and learn experience, when they grow and develop their homes and lawns or relationships with friends and family. So why shouldn't you be allowed to work collectively with other people to figure out and create better? You know, there's another argument. Point out the rising expenses of college, shelter, food and water, clothes, life's basic necessities, and also the basic enjoyments as leisure and recreation. Point out how all of the math and statistics in modern times favor your position. Show them with just a few words how out of touch these people are. Don't let them carry a tone of superiority over you. Another argument, you can always fight dirty, straight up saying things like, I shouldn't have to sacrifice the pursuit to better myself because you don't know your own worth, or something. It doesn't, it's not meant to be a zinger, but having a shut down saying to keep them at bay can work. And then there's always, you can just walk away or be free not to engage. But I'm sure you and I, anybody listening, anybody who's had to deal with that, are sick of having to submit to these incorrect and smug reactionary positions. And I'm sure there's plenty more arguments you can use. Feel free to mention them in the comment. I'm so curious to hear what you have to say. We want more out of life than this. We want to ask for better, to work together and build better. And our own workers, our coworkers, just a little older, but nonetheless all the more smug about somehow knowing more. I mean, I guess experience does help, but somebody should tell these boomers and Gen Xers that they're lagging way behind because their experience is sorely lacking in the information age. These class traders think we are the problem, which is why I'm calling on so many of us to finally start speaking out against these apologists. They may not, or they may be our coworkers, even our friends and family, but it doesn't make them any less wrong, any less disrespectful, any less completely rude and out of line than they are. The more we find ourselves bending to the hierarchy of age, the more we will sacrifice the betterment of our future, appealing to the people who do not have our interests at their hearts. Let people rot who are actively campaigning against you, against us, or people who are too apathetic to care or help. Don't stand by them. Don't do anything extra. Don't go above and beyond for those barely willing to meet you at the breadcrumb level. If they're consistently going to make us question our own worth and our own fight, why should we ever listen to them ever again? Demand more. You are worth more, and you know you are worth more because we are all worth more than this. These dissenters, are better than this. But all of us can still choose better. We can show through our ideas, our communication, our movement, and our actions that our way is better. That is not just a possibility, it is the natural destination we, in our ideals, wish to be heading towards. It is the organic conclusion for us all to put aside our worst parts and become stronger, to try a little harder to be accountable to our own selves and to each other. It is the natural upward, albeit uphill, battle to a better life, toiling against difficult conditions to have better. Don't be afraid to show them what we're made of. That's all I got for now. Thanks again for listening and watching. Take care, and I wish you well. Let me know what you think in the comments, and like and subscribe. And yeah, thanks again. See you in the next one.